Thanks very much for coming, everybody. My name is Rachel Farley and I'm the Postgraduate Recruitment Officer for Edge Hill University. A lot of you might not have heard of us. Our name doesn't particularly give us away, but we're based in between Liverpool and Manchester, and we're the largest provider of teacher training in the whole of the country. So we actually offer all of the age phases from early years all the way up to college level teaching, and we also offer the largest range of courses as well in terms of subjects. I think it is important for me to say that I'm here to talk generally about the different routes into postgraduate teacher training. So what I have tried to do is give as much information as possible, but there are certain instances where it will be up to you to investigate the individual university because some things do change slightly, but all I can say is it is a very good career to go into. At the moment there's a lot of changes going on around teacher training, and I've mentioned a couple of those on the presentation. Such things like skills tests, and what the government are really trying to do is upskill the whole of the school sort of body so that people are more prepared for going through every stage of their education. What I'll do is I'll start cracking on with the presentation. If anyone's got any questions, just stop me, or you can come and chat to me at the stand, because I think the most important thing is wherever you go to do teacher training, because it's so strictly governed by the government, everything's quite similar wherever you go to. Okay. These are the things I'm going to talk about today. So what is postgraduate teacher training? The PGCE route, the Schools Direct route. I'll touch very briefly on Teach First, the fees and bursaries, the application process, but I will talk quite a lot about making a strong application with a particular reference to the personal statement, because actually that's the key part of the whole application. They've only given me around half an hour to get everything in, so I've had to be very general, but if anyone does want to ask me any questions at the end, that's fine. So postgraduate teacher training gives people qualified teacher status. So wherever you want to teach within the UK, or if you want to teach internationally with it, the PGCE stands for Postgraduate Certificate in Education. It's the internationally recognised qualification, and it gives you qualified teacher status. You can generally teach all of these age phases. So we do the early years 3 to 7, primary 7 to 11, secondary 11 to 16, and post-compulsory is the 16 plus. So it basically means anybody out of compulsory education. A lot of places don't do all of these age phases. We, as I mentioned, we actually cover all of these. The post-compulsory is actually quite an interesting one. As I mentioned, it's people over the age of 16 out of compulsory education. And it's not just colleges, as most people just think of colleges, but it's actually things like prisons, learning community centres, libraries, anywhere where adult education is taught, you can gain a qualification to actually teach in there. It lends itself very well to flexible working, because a lot of people can work between different colleges, do different hours, and you know, it's very, very good if you've got a family and you want to sort of work around that. So there are lots of different options, and actually what the government said last year was that anyone who's got a qualification in post-compulsory teaching can actually go to teach in secondary schools, but it's up to your employer whether they decide to pay you as a fully qualified teacher or not. So that's the caveat at the moment. The most popular route is the PGCE. As I've mentioned, it stands for Postgraduate Certificate in Education. The focus on the course is really developing your teaching styles and your teaching skills. The PGCE, or any form of teacher training, is really, we're not teaching you anymore about your subject, we're teaching you how to teach. So it's a very intensive programme. Most places tend to offer it 1 year full time, which is actually only an academic year, so it's from September to June. Some places offer it 2 years part-time, and other places offer it flexible. We offer all of those different routes on the majority of courses, but not all of them. Flexible is a really good option for some people, because a lot of people are either returning to do a PGCE after maybe being in the workforce for a while, or have just come out of a very intensive undergraduate programme, have got family commitments and other circumstances that might prevent them from doing an intensive 1 year course. And flexible means that we literally tailor-make it to the individual and their needs. The majority of your time you're spending in schools anyway, so we can work around that. And just an example of how flexible it can be, we do the design technology on a flexible basis, and we've got a chap who works on the rigs as his full-time job as an engineer, and he's actually doing it flexible, and his shift pattern is 12 weeks on and 12 weeks off. On his 12 weeks off he's doing his teacher training with us, he's out in schools, He's obviously taken the longest amount of time possible to do that course, which is 3 years. But you know, it's very, very flexible to the individual. The reason we say you have to do it within a maximum of 3 years is because curriculum changes quite often, so you need to be up to speed with that. But you can do it from anywhere from 1 year up to 3 years maximum, and we literally tailor it to suit you. If you start on a flexible programme and decide to do it over 1.5 years and things change, you can up the pace and get it done quicker, or if you know circumstances change and you need to relax the pace, you can also do that, so it's a really, really good option. The cost is £9,000 nationwide wherever you go to do that. Obviously that is quite a lot of money when you're graduating, and you've got your undergraduate loan as well. The good news is that not only are there generous bursaries available, and I'll talk about that in a little bit, you are entitled to get another student loan like your undergraduate loan, which will cover your fee for you. Teacher training and some health programmes is the only courses where you can get additional funding, because we're always going to need to train teachers and nurses. So the government realised that they need to put something in place for that. The bursaries are available in most subjects, not all, and they tend to change from year to year depending on where there are shortages of teachers. So for example, last year there were no bursaries available in primary, but this year there are, because they've realised that as teachers have retired, or you know that there's more primary age children coming through, they need more primary teachers. But I will talk about that on the next slide. The Schools Direct, some of you might have heard quite a lot about this because the government have really been banging on about it. It's an alternative way of getting a qualified teacher status, and what they're saying is it's a fully school-based route, but actually it's no different in a lot of senses to a standard PGCE. With the PGCE programme, which is the one I mentioned before, you're spending around 90% of your time in a school. On a Schools Direct programme, you're spending 90% of your time in a school. There's 1 day a week where on a PGCE programme you'd have to come to the university, and with Schools Direct the university comes to you in your school, so actually there isn't any difference. The good thing for students like yourself is it gives you an extra option to decide which route is the most suitable for you. It's open to students, graduates of a high calibre. And this is where you have to be quite careful, we offer our Schools Direct programme, which will give you the qualified teacher status, but not all providers do give you qualified teacher status with their Schools Direct, and this is one of those things where I mentioned you need to check with the individual provider. It's just a case of ringing up whichever university runs Schools Direct and say, do you provide QTS with your Schools Direct? There are 2 options with it. One is a salaried route, and the salary is in line with what an unqualified teacher would get, which is around £15,000. And they expect you to be coming with 3 years worth of work experience, and that can be any type of work experience. It's really a way to get people who've been out into the workforce or maybe want to change of career back into education. As you can expect, that route is extremely competitive because everyone thinks, oh great, I'm going to be getting a salary of 15,000. What I would caution you on is there are also very generous bursaries on the standard PGCE route, and in some cases that bursary may be higher than the salaried route you would get on a Schools Direct. So this is why I'm saying you have to look at what route would be best for you. The standard route, if you go through that, would attract a bursary as well. So you've got this quite clever decision making you have to make. With Schools Direct, it will be a lead university working with a cluster of schools in a particular area, and you would work across that cluster of schools. The likelihood is that the student would gain employment within that school after they've graduated. But at the moment, the first lot of graduates are going through that scheme, and we're still waiting to see how many of them will gain employment on that route. Same application process as PGCE, which is through UCAS teacher training. The places that tend to have the more spaces are the things like physics, maths, chemistry, the languages, English. These are classed as the priority subjects for 2014 and 15, but it will depend on which university is running it and which schools that they're working with. It's quite an unusual case because it's actually in the school's control, whereas a PGC is in a university's control. So it's making life quite complicated for applicants, unfortunately. Before I go on to talk about the bursaries, I did also mention that I'll briefly touch upon the Teach First route. We don't offer that route at Edgeley University because Teach First are actually a charity, and they're designed for people who want to work in maybe sort of tough schools, so maybe inner city schools with a high percentage of kids on with maybe learning and behavioural needs and things like that. Everybody needs to have a 2-1, you'll get a salary, and it's very, very competitive. We don't offer that route, but I know that, you know, Teach First are available. I think there's someone available today to speak to on Teach First. Anyway, I mentioned that there are bursaries available on the PGC. This is nationwide, and it very much goes off what your subject is and what you graduate with as to how much bursary you'll get. Bursary is something that's tax-free and is given to you as an incentive to attract good quality graduates onto certain courses. But you should always also see it as a salary, because you don't want to be holding down any form of part-time work when you're doing either a schools direct or a PGCE. It's a very intensive programme, spending most of your time out in schools. If that school has a team meeting at 8:15 in the morning, you're there for that. If there's extracurricular activity going on, you're there for that, plus 2 and 3 hours work a night at home as well. You don't want to have to feel pressured into doing any form of part-time work. So as you can see from the list of bursaries, the ones where the country really needs these teachers are in the shortage subject areas of physics, maths, computing, chemistry and languages. If you graduate with a first class honours, you will be guaranteed a £20,000 tax-free bursary, and it goes down in stages. And for the first time ever, they've actually allowed people with a third class honours to gain £9,000. That's how critically shortage we are of physics and maths teachers in the UK. This could change from year to year, and last year they actually added something in mid-year, so it's worth checking all the time. You don't have to apply for these bursaries separately, it's an automatic part of the process. Even if you're halfway through your undergraduate degree at the moment and you don't know what you graduate with, they can see that and it'll kick in when you start in September. A few years ago, these bursaries used to be called Golden Hellos, and they used to give them to people at the beginning of the course, which was a bit dangerous because people used to think, actually I don't want to go into teaching, I'll just buy myself a new car, and off they swanned with a new car. So they're a bit more sensible now, and they give it to you in equal monthly instalments over the course. So if you did decide to do a flexible programme, and you did it over 2 years, it would just spread over the 2 years. If it was 1 year full time, it'd be spread over that. And you know, if you are getting a bursary, use it to pay off things like accommodation costs. Just don't worry about trying to get any part-time work. The column at the end, as you can see, these are the primary and the other kind of shortage subject areas, but not enough to give you £20,000. So as you can see, English, history, biology, geography, music, design and technology, which are the core subjects in schools. Things like business, psychology no longer attract any form of bursary, unfortunately. I mentioned that the fees are £9,000 wherever you go. Unfortunately, there's no getting away from that, but everyone is entitled to get out a student loan, no matter how many years of funding they've had at undergraduate level. The student loans company pay the university your fee, and you only have to start paying that back when you're earning £21,000 or more. They're not daft though, because the starting salary for a teacher is £21,500. So as soon as you get your first job, you'll start paying it back in a very small amount. I think if you started off on the bottom, which is £21,500, it's around £7.50 per month out of your bank. People who are graduating, you're right.
Is this a talk on finance or?
Teaching.
Teaching?
Yes.
Oh, any idea where a talk on finance is?
No, sorry, no, sorry.
No, sorry.
Sorry about that. If you are interested in, so I've totally lost my thread now, she's interrupted me, sorry. If you are graduating in something like chemistry, physics, maths, some of the shortage subject areas, you are very likely to be able to actually command a higher starting salary than the £21,500. And the £21,500, I should mention, is actually outside of the London area, so in a London school you would get slightly more. But it could also depend on what the size of your school is, how many of the kids in your school are maybe classed as maybe difficult, things like that. So, you know, it's not a set 21.5. You are also entitled to apply for additional loans if you wish, of up to 5,000. So that might be more suitable for someone who maybe doesn't get a bursary or who maybe gets a low bursary. and also things like non-repayable grants. And a grant is something that you don't have to pay back, a loan is something that you do. And the grants will cover things like living costs, food, travel, but that will be means tested and based on household income and other things like that. The household income up to £25,000, you can get the full grant of nearly £3,500, and it goes down slightly. But what is important to remember is the universities are always trying to attract good quality graduates in all of these subjects. So every university, now that the fee is set at £9,000 across the board, will have their own incentives to attract students. So some universities have laptops. There was one university down south a few years ago, but I do love this example, who had a problem with parking on campus, so they gave every postgrad student a bike, which I thought was quite good. We actually have a £200 gift card that can be used for things like books and materials and things like that. So, you know, have a look around. It shouldn't really sway you, but, you know, it's worth checking out, see what's available. Whichever route you apply for, apart from the Teach First, so if you're applying for a PGCE or Schools Direct, you would be applying via UCAS teacher training. That was something that was new, introduced last year. So a lot of you will be familiar with UCAS through applying through your undergraduate course. Some of you may have heard that it was through GTTR. That's now actually going to be through UCAS teacher training, so it makes it much more in line with the undergraduate application. The good thing is it's a save and return, so you can fill in all the basic information and then you know, return to it whenever you're ready to submit it finally. And I would recommend that you would do that for reasons I'll mention in a little bit. A lot of it is basic information, your name, address, qualifications, which you can reel off within about 20 minutes probably. You get 3 simultaneous choices, this is something new which changed for this year onwards, which is really good for the applicant. In previous years, if you were applying for a secondary course, you had 4 choices, so that was either 4 courses or 4 different universities. If it was primary, you only had 2, and it was 2 universities or two courses you could apply to. But what was really unfair was that it only went to you had to put it down in order of preference of where you wanted to go to, and it only went to your first choice first. They considered your application, decided what to do with you. If it was a yes, it didn't go to any of the others. And if it was a no, it would only then go to the others. And by that point, places for primary, early years, PE, which are very competitive, could have been full at your second and third choice. So it actually, a lot of people never even got a look in. Now it's going to be 3 simultaneous choices, so you can put down 3 institutions or 3 courses for secondary, and exactly the same for primary, and it goes to all of them at the same time. So for you guys, it's really good. But for universities, we're actually scrabbling between us for really good graduates. It's all going to go to 3 of them at the same time. And we have to now turn the whole process around within 40 days. So if once you put in your application, we've got to assess that application, decide whether we're going to call you for interview and give you a decision all within 40 days. So if you're an excellent graduate, you could find that you're being interviewed by 3 different universities within, maybe a week and a half period. After that point, you have 10 days to give that decision to the university. So you may be lucky and have 2 universities fighting over you, and you can, at that point, negotiate and say, well, yes. Is there any accommodation on campus? Yes, I'd like this type of accommodation, please. So, yes, we'll have to see how that's going to happen. Applications open a full year in advance. We open the UCAS teacher training this year because it was new, it only opened in November to start September 2014, but they're hoping that the application system will open in the October, as it did do in previous years. There is no set closing date, which is great in many respects. It gives you the opportunity to take your time with some courses, it's just as and when it's full. However, courses like primary, early years, PE, English, history, geography, they will close very, very full because we'll get a big rush of applications at the beginning of the cycle. So for us, yes, we are the biggest provider and we do have the most number of spaces, but history and PE were full before Christmas and applications only opened in November. So some courses you have to be very quick at getting your application in. You also have to provide 2 references. One needs to be an academic reference if you've been in education for the last 5 years. The other one can be a reference of your choosing, but personally I don't think that the academic reference is often the best one unless you've got a really good relationship with your tutor. I think that the other reference is often better, particularly if you choose somebody wisely. So Normally universities will ask you to get some experience in a school before you apply so that you know that you're going to like it as a teacher. I would always try to choose that person, or maybe the head or someone you've worked with in a school, to give you a reference, because they have seen you based on the work and the course that you're going to be doing. And I've mentioned that it's very clever decision making. You do have to be very clever. You might get 3 choices, but there's a lot of universities offering teacher training, so it's up to you to decide where you like the look of, where you like the sound of, where's got more places than others, which ones have got good recommendations by Ofsted, and things like that. So it is quite a difficult decision to make as to where you're going to apply to and which type of postgrad teacher training route you're going to go for. I mentioned that the application is a save and return, and I said that it's a good idea to do that. The major part of the application is the personal statement. The rest of it is dead easy to fill in. And as somebody who reads applications and who sits on interview panels, I can't stress enough how much we rely on the personal statement, which dictates us who to call for interview. If you look at it from a university's perspective, everybody comes with a name, an address, the qualification at a similar level, and it doesn't give very much away about the individual's personality. The personal statement is the only way we can see what you are like as an individual. It's the only thing that makes you different from you in terms of the experience you're getting. It's your only chance to put across your personality. We want to know the reasons why you've chose that course, why you want to work with that age range, and what you've experienced out in school. So things like classroom management, what level of responsibility you had. And if you're secondary or further education, you've also got to put across your passion for your subject as well. I've mentioned that it's the nemesis because a lot of people, come with a lot of experience and are very, very passionate about teaching, but if they don't manage to get that across in the right way, we have got no choice, but we just can't call them for an interview. And one example of that was a lady who'd had 4 years worth of experience out in school as a teaching assistant. She came across as very enthusiastic, but her personal statement, she only used 1 line. We always say to somebody, try and start with a really good opening sentence, which she did, but that was all she said. And she said was, I believe I have the passion and knowledge to enable our children to flourish for the future, which is an absolutely brilliant opening line, but she didn't say anything else. And we couldn't call her for an interview because we were like, well, you need to tell us what you've done and why you love your subjects and what you've done out in school. You've had 4 years in school and that is all you say. As an opening line, it was really good though. Some people start with, I want to be a teacher because, well, we know you want to be a teacher because you wouldn't have applied for this course and you've wasted 6 words there where you could have filled it with something a little bit better. Other things we're looking for are also external things. So if you do any sports or volunteering, that might just give you the edge over another candidate. So take your time over it, take a week if necessary. Write clearly, don't repeat yourself. As I say, we already know you want to be a teacher. We know what your degree was because we can see it from the qualifications section. Come across as enthusiastic and motivated. The number of applications that we get where they're just so boring to read and you just think, well, you've got to stand up here and inspire these kids in a subject that they probably don't enjoy or don't even want to sit there, but they've got to. So, be enthusiastic. Check your spelling and your grammar. You can do it all in Word, spell check it and copy and paste it over and make it interesting for us to read because yes, we get a lot of applications, but yours might be the last one that we read of 60 that day. So, make it interesting for us to read because it is literally the only thing we've got to go off. I know that I have literally rushed through that because I've only been given half an hour, so I've got about 4 minutes left. I think I did pretty well. I know I didn't go over the qualifications, however, you can come and pick up a prospectus from the stand. There's a lot of other providers in the room that do teacher training as well. Generally, the qualifications are more or less exactly the same. There's quite a few Train to Teach events happening. There's the London Train to Teach events on the 1st of March, but a lot of you might be interested in the Birmingham Train to Teach event, which is at the ICC. All teacher training providers and schools direct providers in the area are going to be there on that day, including ourselves. So if you wanted to come along and have a chat to different providers and things, you can do that. And we've also got our own open events going on as well. Where you can come along and chat to the tutors and maybe sit your skills tests.